Welcome to the Uniquely Texas podcast, where agriculture meets storytelling. I'm your host, Jean Lonie Dudley, and I'm excited to get to explore what makes some really special crops in Texas unique. Our goal at Uniquely Texas is to celebrate Texas agriculture and give a little love to some of the crops you might not even know are grown here. As we highlight some very unique things growing in Texas, from azaleas to zucchini, we also want to share the amazing families that are growing these special crops and the communities they help support. Before we get going, I want to share that Uniquely Texas is a project of Tarleton State University's College of Agriculture and Natural Resources with funding through the Texas Department of Agriculture's Specialty Crop Block Grant. Now, this episode I am excited about because I learned a lot just getting ready. I am excited that we have a guest that I've met prior, but we just were chatting. It's been years since I've gotten to see her or visit with her. But I have to start with a really bad, it's not a pun, but an imitation, I guess. I am what I am. That's my Popeye. And if you haven't figured it out, we're talking about spinach this week. Winter Garden, Texas was once known as the spinach capital of the world. I find that fascinating. And we'll talk a little bit more about why and why that area of Texas is such a big deal, particularly for spinach. But back in 1948, Texas was producing 80% of the nation's spinach. Paige, what is that today? Do you know where we rank on that today?
Gosh, I'm not positive, but it's extremely low.
So
Yeah.
there have been some changes in all of this
Yes,
and
there
where
has.
it's grown and what it looks like, and that's
Yeah.
brilliant because we're
And
going to
the
talk about that. Go
the
ahead.
bulk of it now is grown in in Salinas Valley in California.
Okay, so we'll talk a little about that and where Texas still ranks today. Today, most of our state spinach is still in your area, correct? Winter Garden
Yeah. Yes,
still the leader with Texas spinach.
that's
And in
correct.
fact, this year, if I've mathed correctly, it's the 42nd Crystal City Spinach Festival at the end of October into November.
Yes, I believe so. They're
That
still continuing that tradition.
That is fantastic. I loved getting to read about that. And if you go to the Crystal City Spinach Festival or you take a trip into the Winter Garden area, you will see Popeye. Tell us a little bit about growing up in the shadow of Popeye.
Well, growing up, I really didn't enjoy spinach at all. I didn't want to eat it. I didn't want anything to do with it. But I did enjoy watching Popeye. I looked at that cartoon growing up, and growing up in a spinach family, they
Yeah,
wanted you to watch Popeye, and I did enjoy the show. I just didn't enjoy eating
not the
spinach.
spinach.
Yeah,
That's funny. That's funny. Talk about giving the family business a little bit of a hard time.
yeah,
Yeah,
I did.
yeah. Well, I love our joking aside, you really will see Popeye cutouts and statues if you go down to the Winter Garden area. And I thought it was interesting. I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole on that. I don't know why, but I was fascinated by it. And the cartoon's creator, E.C. Seeger, actually gave permission to the city to promote Popeye there. So
That's
that's a
correct.
pretty
Yeah.
neat spinach connection. Um, Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the growing of spinach and what's unique about it and how we've all come to love it. I know I'm learning far more tricks to do with spinach than I ever knew were possible. So we can talk a little bit about that. Um, but I'm gonna go a little bit history nerd on us right now, and that is that spinach actually came from Persia to begin with, and it came to the United States in the early 1800s. And the name spinach that we call it today is actually from a Persian word called ispanai, meaning green hand. And then later the word came spinacia in late Latin, and then it was spinach in English. And I thought that was just fascinating that there's this really neat history to it. And in fact, in Chinese culture, this spinach symbolizes growth, health, and longevity. So, I mean, Popeye again, really, that's kind of what we think is going to make us pretty healthy. Now, I don't normally do this. I don't normally give away dates of when we record because I never quite know when these are going to appear. But Paige, you and I are chatting in just about mid-March, and March 26th is National Spinach Day. So I'm excited that we can help mark that somehow, even if it's later in the year that everyone's listening to this.
Yeah, that's perfect timing.
Absolutely. So we're going to jump to our guest, and I've got I so many spinach facts right now. I actually am a little bit impressed with myself, and I need hobbies clearly because I this was a lot. I really went down rabbit holes on this one. But Paige Ritchie is with us from Tiro Trace Farms in La Pryor, Texas. And Paige, you are on a multi-generation farm that's been owned by the family for more than 100 years. And I understand from your website, the Ritchie brothers were once the spinach kings. And
Yeah.
that's how the family got started. Tell us about that. I love that. I love that name.
Yeah, well, so they got started back in 1924 with the spinach. They had already been farming in the area in the Rio Grande. And so, technology advances. We have railroad systems coming this way now. There's ice plants. Ice has become available. So they decide, you know what, we can ship spinach now. We can get ship spinach on the rail cars and ice it. And that's when the spinach boom in the area happened. There
Yeah.
was a lot of spinach growers in this area. That's the time when, we were leading some of the market here in the United States at that time. Um, so they took advantage of that, and they were cranking out the spinach, and that's how they got to be known as the spinach kings during that time.
That's outstanding. I hadn't even thought of the ice connection, but
Hmm.
it makes
It had a
complete
lot to do with
sense.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is interesting that you mentioned that. A fact that I read is 8 days after being picked, spinach loses half of its major nutrients. So even back then, you had to be quick and thoughtful about getting it harvested, getting it packed, temperature controlled, and moving.
Yes, yeah, temperature control plays a big role, and still today. I know we don't use ice anymore. We haven't used ice in years, but so now we use vacuum coolers, and so that we bring it in from the field, as quick as possible, get it packed, get it palletized, and then they go into these vacuum tubes, so we can get them cooled down from the ambient temperature to they're like 34, 36 degrees in about 15 minutes in a cycle. And so that's plays a big role in preserving the shelf life. So we
Yeah.
have to get it cooled as quick as possible.
Yeah. Because your spinach goes all over the country, and I'm assuming may even go outside of the US.
Yes, it does. So pretty much all 100% is outside of Texas.
Yeah.
All of it goes to the East Coast and to Canada.
The first time I got to come see your farm, we went through the packaging line and I got to see it. And I don't know if I had even moved here yet from the East Coast. And I got so excited because that was the spinach I bought back home. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea it came from Texas. So it was
Yeah.
really neat. Just that thought of now talking to you going from packet, like I have frozen in mind with the ice cutters and, putting your blocks and getting your spinach going, to now we've got this incredible technology to cool it, to preserve that shelf life, knowing it loses nutrients quickly. How do we manage that to make sure that when we buy it, it's still got all of that nutritional value, and then get it across the country? That's incredible. That's amazing. So tell a little bit. We'll wander back into that space, but we sort of joked about it early on. You didn't love spinach growing up, but you're still in it as a career. I mean, you are a
Yeah.
professional in the family business. Tell us a little bit about that journey, if you would.
So I never thought that I'd be back on the family farm. Really, I went to college with every intention of going into some type of business, whether finance or accounting, that type of field. When I got there, I realized, oh, I don't really like this as much as I thought I would. So I switched my degree plan to agribusiness, thinking that, well, that will broaden my range when I get outside of college. It'll give me
Yeah.
some, access to different job opportunities. Maybe I do want to go into the agriculture field. So I came back home the summer after college and I was hanging out, and uh, the neighbor that was working with my dad at the time approached me and said, you should really come and check out, what your dad does. And he needs some help in the office. And I'm thinking that I'm going to be moving soon and he could really use some help. And so I got there and I was like, you know what? Okay, I'll give it a try. I'll give it. And she started teaching me everything. And I had no idea that that much went into farming other than the farming itself, all the
Yeah.
paperwork, all the regulations, the food safety compliance. And so I was like, "Well, you know what? I kind of enjoy this, and I get to see my dad and I get to work with my dad, and
Yeah.
maybe I will stay and stick around and help." And I'm still here. So
Yeah. I love it. You bring up such a fantastic point, and I think it's one that most people don't realize. I worked for an incredible gentleman who said a line once that stuck with me for decades now. He said, "Agriculture is a business without walls, but it's every bit of business." You've got human resources issues, you've got
yeah.
all of the business pieces, and not only do you have, okay, what equipment do we need? How much
Mhm.
seed do I need? What are all of my inputs? Because
Oh yeah.
you've got to make the season work. But then you've got food safety requirements, and they are not insignificant. We talk about we have such a safe food supply. You bear a lot of that burden and work. And I don't say that in a negative, but that starts with you. And that's a lot to
Yes.
manage as well.
It really is. I and couldn't believe the extent that it we go to supply us a safe food, a safe product, and a quality product.
Yeah. And even just thinking about the shipping. So, okay, you've got everything that's going back. Let's say it's going back to my home state in Pennsylvania. You've got basically, you've got to know every step of that product till I go buy it in the store or somebody goes to buy it in the store. That's from the seed, what plot of
Mhm.
ground it was grown in, when you harvested it, what temperature it's been at the whole way through. There's a whole uh, I'm probably sharing far more than listeners may want to know, but there's even a whole process to track the temperature that the trucks were at the entire way through it, all the way through to the grocery store. That's that's an incredible thing to think. Again, we've come from packing it on ice on wagons all the way to I can tell you what particular plot of ground that was
Yeah.
grown in.
Yeah. In some cases, down to the acre.
That's wild.
Yeah. We have to label everything. Everything has a lot code, and it follows that all the way through to the shelf.
Yeah. I have to imagine those are moments where that business interest really comes in handy.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does.
That not every, we think about farmers and we think about that production side. I think a lot of times we forget what incredibly savvy business people they are as well to keep these operations going. I mean, you guys are 100 years. Obviously, you know what you're doing.
Well, I hope so. We learn something new every day,
I
though.
that
Yeah.
I believe, that I
And
believe. And every time you think you've got it right, Mother
right.
Nature goes, "Mm-mm, no,
Uh-huh.
nope, I'm smarter." Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, there's always a new challenge that's arisen,
yeah.
and it never ends, really.
Well, and you think about the whether you're talking weather or you're trying to figure out, how do consumers want it? So we've gone to the bag trend, but now, some people are looking for more loose leaf. You've got all these different components that you've got to figure out. You're having to do it with fewer inputs, potentially less land. We've got to be really thoughtful of water, what
Yeah.
inputs you're putting in. And then if you would talk a little bit about spinach, I don't know how I didn't know this, but I didn't. You sort of think of, okay, you go harvest. But it's not just one thing with spinach. You can get more than one cutting, and you've got sort of a period of time to grow and harvest. Can you talk a little bit about what that is, and maybe why Winter Garden's so uniquely situated in Texas to be the spinach capital here?
Yeah, so the winter garden area has always been known for its mild winters, and the cool temperatures. It makes the right environment for growing cool season crops. Not just spinach, and a lot of other crops were grown here in the area too that do well in this climate. And we have like a 6 month window to grow spinach and those green crops, those leafy greens that like this type of weather. um, so typically we start planting in October, and we'll have our first crop ready at the beginning of November to harvest. And so we're consistently planting. We put in a planting every 7 to 12 days so we can stay on a harvest schedule to finish out our season at the end of April.
So that's every week and a half,
Mhm.
you're replanting, it's growing, you're harvesting.
Yes. And like you said, we can get more cuts on a specific spinach,
Yeah,
but baby leaf, you can only cut one
that's
time.
just once. So you go back in and plant again and just keep redoing it.
Yes.
So
And
that is a 6 months hustle.
yeah, 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 we
Wow.
have the seed coming, managing that inventory and ordering the
Yeah.
seed and making the planning schedules so that we have a consistent harvest schedule. Um, we try to get as close as we can to not having any gaps, but weather also plays a big issue. These freezes can slow down our growth time. Oh, just the other day, we had a bad windstorm and we lost one of the fields because all the leaves got tip burned all over the edge
Oh, no.
from the wind, from
Yeah.
how like fast the wind was blowing. It burnt the tips of the leaf. So we have all these challenges that we face every season,
Yeah. Every day.
every
Or
day. Yeah.
every 7 to 10 days, you've got to
Yeah.
sweat it out again. Well, now we know why National Spinach Day is in March. You don't come up for air until then.
No, we don't. And then this is like the transition period, also for Yuma and California.
Mhm.
Those are the two big areas now that grow spinach. And we're over here, we're kind of in between. And so we can sometimes fill that gap when they're transitioning.
Oh, that makes sense. So that's pretty neat that when it gets the weather isn't ideal elsewhere, then the Texas crop can step in and fill that and hopefully
Yeah,
bring some business consistency for our farmers.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's awesome. And so spinach is a cool season crop. So
Mhm.
that's exactly what Paige is talking about, is it's one that's planted and harvested in the cooler weather. And you've got that. I sort of chuckled that it's cool evenings and mild day temperatures. I'm like, okay, well, I'm spinach because that's what I prefer too. So I'm down with that. That's awesome. Um, Now you mentioned this page, and I want to make sure that we do justice to Tiro Trace. You have conventional and organic spinach, but that's not all that you do. That's certainly a piece of it. And starting out as the Spinach Kings, it's a big piece of it. What else do y'all grow at Tiro Trace?
So here at Tiro Tras Farms with my dad, so he does the spinach. We just started doing some kale and some collard greens for a customer down in the valley. So we've been doing a lot of that this year, more than almost more than spinach. We're at like a 60% spinach, 40% collard greens, kale,
Oh,
and
wow.
organics right now.
Yeah.
Um, with our partner, the Crawfords, um, we have the organic farm with them, and then they grow a lot of the other spinach that we need. So that's how we have enough land availability to for our contracts.
Oh, that's awesome. So you
It's
partner
partnered
up.
with them. Yeah, so and that's how we change our blocks and have a block ready every week or so. And so we're constantly hopping around. So who has the water,
Yeah.
availability, who has the ground ready, and we're able to hop around between all of our farms so that we can always have a planting available. because you never know. Sometimes we're rained out in one spot and we're having to go plant somewhere else. So it helps
Yeah.
that all the farms are, anywhere from a couple miles to 20 miles apart.
Yeah. So what a fabulous concept of it's almost more a I'm not going to say it's a cooperative, but it's a collaborative.
Yes.
We're all in this together and sharing in hopefully easing the risk. You talked about the wind burn, the
Yeah.
tips getting like, man, that's if you're by yourself, that's devastating.
Yes, it
If you
is.
can figure that out and come back and get a new crop in collectively, then hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah, so luckily, because we stagger our plannings like that, we were able to move to the next block that was going to be ready, and
Yeah.
we didn't have a gap. So
Yeah.
we, or have our risk spread,
Yeah.
like you were saying.
Yeah.
And the Crawfords actually also do the harvesting. So he has the harvester. He has his custom 3-bed harvester that he
Yeah.
built. And so with our partnership, he's doing the harvesting. We're controlling the packing shed and the packing facility and shipping the product out. And also, I'm overseeing all of the food safety for all of our farms and the organic farm as well.
Yeah. Talk a little bit, if you would, Paige. So we did an episode on organics, and we got sort of into the science and the regulation of it. But can you talk a little bit from your perspective as a grower? What does organic mean? What what would you share with consumers who are curious about conventional versus organic, and what their options are? Because I think a lot of people have thoughts and assumptions about it, but might not know there's actually a pretty prescribed process to follow, or some rules and reviews in place when you say that you're organic.
Yes, there is. We go through an organic inspection every year to keep our certification. And there is a lot of rules and regulations we have to follow on top of just a food safety audit. It's a separate organic audit, and we have to follow their set of regulations as well as following the food safety regulations. And sometimes those can clash because an organic, you think raw manure, right? Sometimes, well, that's not allowed in leafy greens. We
That
can't use
that feels
that.
very wrong for what you're growing. Yes.
Yeah, and so, people think, okay, yeah, organic, fresh, the earth, nature, and it is all about that. It's about, keeping your soil health and having a healthy plant, a healthy crop, caring for the land. But those are all things we also do conventionally. We
Mhm.
just do them in different ways.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
it's about the toolbox that's available to
Yes.
you as a
Yeah.
grower,
Yes,
and
it is.
and then what that translates to for the consumers. So you talk a little bit, and I'm going to try to not get science heavy on this, but I think food safety is something that a lot of people, they don't think about it in the way you do. So you mentioned, for example, in an organic operation, depending on what you're growing, manure is a wonderful organic fertilizer. You can put it out with the crops, you can help stuff grow. For leafy greens, if you're growing lettuce, if you're growing collards, if you're growing spinach, that is a huge no-no. You don't want anything like that. And in
Yeah.
fact, you don't even want wildlife in there, because they
Oh,
they may use nature's litter box and
mm,
do some things that you don't want done around a fresh leafy product. So there are very specific rules for all of this, from how many times the folks that are picking it or working in the fields have to wash their hands, all the way through to how do we control critters, wildlife, that type of thing. So it really is just fascinating to me what you've got to sweat through, particularly in this leafy green space. It's just a different level of thinking about food safety and risk management.
yes, it is.
Yeah.
Ooh, a lot of critical thinking.
And that's something that I love hearing you talk about, because I don't think people associate that necessarily with their food being grown, but there is a lot of science and guidance behind this and what we
Sure.
do. I'm gonna switch gears for a second. Um, and I'm gonna share something that probably seems like they don't go together. So spinach is a superfood. It's nutrient dense. It's rich in vitamins A, C, E, K, and folate. So it's incredibly good for you. Collard greens, another really rich, good nutrient, but they're so, so good with bacon and butter and all the oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I don't know that I could ever go to town on just some steamed collard greens, but throw
Yeah.
in a little pork
You need a
fat,
little
little
bacon grease.
bacon.
Yeah.
I'm excited. But spinach in particular, there really is so much good stuff for our body in it. Um, it seems to have had a resurgence in the last, I want to say, decade, and this is my own thoughts and feelings, not based in fact at all. This is just me chatting about what I've seen at the grocery store. But I feel like there's so many more ways to buy it right now, and more being done with it. So you're seeing it in salads. You're seeing salads only made of spinach. You see shakes quite a bit. If folks are on food plans or being really thoughtful of what they're eating, spinach shakes are a huge thing. Talk a little bit, if you would, about that consumption side and maybe what you're seeing as a producer. Have things changed? Are they going different places? Is your packaging different? What's your favorite thing to do with spinach?
Really, my favorite thing to do is cook it with bacon, like you said,
See,
make
all right,
make
good.
it
I
a
feel
little
better.
unhealthy. Yeah.
Well,
But
it just
no,
balances out all those
yeah.
nutrients. It's fine.
Yes. But no, I enjoy it in sandwiches, salads, fresh cooked, in smoothies.
Yeah.
I've even done some like spinach tortillas.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it really can be enjoyed in a lot of ways, like you said, and you're seeing more and more of that. I know, like, there's a dehydrator, and they sell spinach powder.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, sometimes it'll go to a juicer. You know, if we have quality issues, we can try to get a juicer or a dehydrator to take some of the crop that we can't be harvested, and so
Oh,
that's a
that's
great outlet.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that helps you then also limit waste. You've got
Yes.
product that maybe is not going to go into the bag mix or
Hmm.
make it onto the truck, but it's still nutrient dense. It's still 91% water. It meets all the marks. It might just not be visually appealing.
Right.
Let's
Which
put it into
is
juice.
mind blowing to me about the visual appealing. There's things that we can't control, and sometimes it doesn't look that great, but the nutrients are still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I could chat with America over one thing, it would be, it doesn't matter if it's pretty. It's
Yeah.
still got the nutrients. And I would say that across like every crop,
Everything.
I mean, everything. Yeah, the visual appeal is something we've been trained to look for.
Yeah.
It has no correlation to the
No.
nutrient or even the taste, any of that. So yeah, I love in other places they call it like wonky veg, and you can get it a little bit discounted because it's not as pretty and everybody buys it because
Yeah.
it's
Because
still
it's the
good.
same thing, it still
Yeah,
tastes the same.
yeah, yeah.
I know,
So
and don't be afraid of an insect in your bag. That just means there's no pesticides or
that
there's no pesticide residue.
that's
Yeah,
right.
there's no need to complain about it. You should be happy about
Yeah.
finding an insect in your bag.
And it's fresh. I mean,
Yeah,
it came
yeah,
out of the field. So,
yes,
be a little extra protein. It's fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
We've all eaten worse. But
Oh,
a good point of be thoughtful when you buy it, check stuff out. But no, you are truly getting field fresh.
mhm,
And that's part of it because some of the trade-offs that we have to not use chemicals, to not use some of those things are what's called integrated pest management or IPM. So we're actually using those insects in beneficial ways. My husband, who we just recently made him a t-shirt because he loves this line. Ladybugs are the orcas of the insect world. He loves that, and so we had a little t-shirt made for him. But,
Yeah,
ladybugs are great. They're
they are.
wild predators, but they are awesome in that ecosystem. So, embrace that. It's not a bad thing.
No, exactly. You couldn't have said it any better.
If Patrick will be tickled, we snuck in the orca line. So Paige, what surprises you most now that you are in the industry, you're in the family business, and it can be surprises you in a good way. It could be like, wow, I never even thought of that. It could be, man, I never thought my job was going to entail that. But what what's just sort of one, if you could reflect on it, what's one big surprise of coming back and now being such a big part of the family business?
I guess I would say it's a little bit of what we talked about. It's more than just what you think a farmer is does. They're not just in the field. There's the whole business side to it. And that's what did surprise me the most is how much of the critical thinking and the planning and the the regulations and having to keep up with the changing regulations that they change really often.
Yeah.
Almost every year we have a new regulation that's popping up that we have to follow. And it's getting harder to farm. Since I started in with my dad back in 2014, I felt like it every year is just more difficult for us. Our jobs just keep getting harder and we're having to do, more with less.
Yeah. And I will share, as grocery prices are increasingly on everyone's minds, most of that is not going to the farmer. It's
No,
pennies. It's
it's not.
pennies on the dollar, and that share has not increased.
No, it hasn't.
So it is a huge issue that as we're all as consumers thoughtful of paying more, it's not going to the farmer.
No, it's not. Our input costs have risen tremendously since COVID even, and continue to rise. And we still have the backlash from our customers where we can't increase our price or we'll lose our business. So, where farmers have always been stuck right there in the middle, price takers on both ends. And it just will never change. And I mean, over the past couple of years, I don't even think we've gotten to um, account for, all this inflation and our prices.
Yeah.
If anything, we've maybe gotten to come up a penny on some of our products. Even on organic, we've had to cut our price to stay in competition. So, we're
Yeah.
not seeing any of this that where the price has increased at the grocery store in, none of that is coming back to us.
Yeah. There's a line, and I don't know that I'll do it justice, but it says, farmers are the folks that have to pay retail prices for everything, but can only sell wholesale prices.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's
I've
it's
heard
a
that line, and it's
challenge.
true. Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
it's a challenge. If you look ahead, what's an aspiration for you for the farm or the business moving forward?
I'd really like to keep more of our product local. Yeah,
That's awesome.
that's always been like a goal of ours. Uh,
Yeah.
but it is a huge infrastructure change and costly for us to set up a washing and a bagging line. And a lot of, consumers, they want that ready to eat product. They want it
Yeah.
washed and in a bag already and just go grab it off the shelf at the grocery store. That for a small family farm, that's a huge investment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what's been so difficult on trying to keep our produce local here. And that's why we have to ship everything off for further processing.
Yeah. Gotcha. That makes sense, and that's helpful to know. What have we not covered that you think's worth sharing with the folks who are listening?
We hit a lot of the important topics, I think. The food safety, I would say, and then going back to some of the organics, I would say, don't be afraid of conventional produce. It's safe. We're following our pre-harvest intervals with our pesticide applications.
Mhm.
We have to keep that track of every single one that we make. We have really good records. We're even doing some residue testing because some of that is required, especially with exports to Canada,
Yeah.
since they follow different pesticide laws than we do here in the States. But the greens are safe. I know like they come out on the dirty dozen list for some reason every year, but I can vouch for us, and I know that we're, following the regulations that we're supposed to follow. I know that we're growing a
Yeah.
safe and a quality product, and you shouldn't be afraid to eat conventional. It's almost the same as the organic, where like what you said, we're just having to use a different toolkit.
Yeah.
On organic, we're spraying pesticides as well. They're just a different type of pesticide.
Yeah.
They're, the bios and
They're not synthetic.
they're
Yep.
not synthetic.
Yeah.
But we're still spraying them. We
Yeah.
have to get insect control because they don't want insects or insect holes in the leaves when the bag gets to the grocery store.
Yeah.
We'll get rejected. Sometimes we can't even harvest a field because the insect damage is so bad at the organic farm. And
Yeah.
so that's why, in my opinion, just as long as you're supporting the leafy green industry, it doesn't matter if it's organic or
Yeah.
conventional. And like
Choose your greens.
yeah, choose the greens. They're, like you said, all of the nutritional value that they have, they're safe. We go through so much every day to ensure the safety and the quality of the product. And they
Yeah.
shouldn't be afraid of a conventional product. Or I mean, the choice is yours, but choose the leafy greens.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, the choice is yours. That really is the beauty of the food system we have. You have a lot of choice, and I think that's pretty incredible and a credit to our farmers like you. Now, I'm going to ask something that I probably should have asked very early on, but tell us about the name of the farm, if you would.
Oh yeah, okay. So Tiro Tres Farms, that translates to third shot farms. And it goes back with the Ritchie brothers, and going from them to my dad and my grandpa. So they weren't enabled to continue the business. Some of them had passed on, and they were trying to decide, well, does some of the Ritchie family keep the business going? Well, that happened to be my dad and my grandpa. So that was the third shot at keeping the family business going. And then it so happens that my dad's also Ed Ritchie the third. So
Oh, fantastic.
yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand with being the third shot.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. You also say it beautifully. I feel like I butcher it every time I say it. But that is incredible. What a neat story, and what a wonderful way to wrap up our time together. Paige, I can't thank you enough. Where can folks find you if they want more information on the farm or what you're growing, or hopefully one day if you've got some local offerings, where can they find you?
Oh, well, we do have a website, tirotresfarms.com. And we're also on LinkedIn and on Instagram at Tiro Tres Farms. Like I said, our produce doesn't stay in Texas, unfortunately. It all goes to the East Coast in Canada. But if they're ever passing by La Pryor and we're in season and we're running, we're always more than happy to sell to the general public.
That's awesome. That is great to know. So that's I'm so self-aware right now that I'm not going to say it as beautifully as you do. Tiro Tres, TIROTRESFARMS.com. You can also find them on LinkedIn and Instagram. If you get a chance in late October to early November, go to the Crystal City Spinach Festival. You'll get to see the Ritchies there and all of the folks in the Winter Garden area. And just get your leafy greens. You can check us out online at uniquely-texas.com or find other episodes of our podcast on Spotify. Paige, thank you so much for being with us. This was a blast. It's great to see you again. And I'm ready for my spinach smoothie now.
Well, enjoy that. I think I might go make one too.
Perfect.